Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to my channel Colonati. Today I'm going to do a big long video about the original trilogy in the Dragon Riders of Pern series by Anne McCaffrey. These books are 3 of the first 6 to be published in the series, and they are Dragonflight from 1968, Dragonquest from 1970, and The White Dragon from 1978. The other 3 books are the Harper Hall trilogy, which is more like a YA series, and I've done a separate video about that. What you need to know about the reading order is that you can read the Harper Hall trilogy first. That is what I would actually recommend. But if you want to start with Dragonflight, then I would recommend reading the Harper Hall trilogy in between Dragonquest and The White Dragon, because events in The White Dragon make a lot more sense after you've read Dragon Song, Dragon Singer, and Dragon Drums. I'm a big fan of Pern. I have read all of the original books that Anne McCaffrey wrote by herself, but this is my first time rereading these books as a bona fide adult, and I have thoughts and opinions, so this video is going to be discussing what these books are about and what I think are the strengths and weaknesses. So to begin, here's the quickest 50-cent tour of Pern's world building that sets the stage. Pern is a colonized planet. It is threatened by alien spores that fall on it from the Red Star, which is a planet in the system with a very erratic orbit. Thread devours all organic material that it comes in contact with. It is deadly to plants, crops, animals, people, everything you need to survive. So fire-breathing dragons burn Thread out of the sky before it can land on the ground. But the Red Star is not always close enough for Thread to fall. When Thread is falling regularly on Pern, that is called a pass, and in between each pass is an interval of about 200 years. When Dragonflight begins, the 9th pass is about to start after an especially long interval of 400 years, and most people, no longer believe that Thread will come back. Dragon Riders now have a very low status, and most people no longer want to tithe to the Dragon Weirs in order to support them. And strangely, 5 of the 6 Weirs on Pern have disappeared. Bendon Weir is the only remaining one, and it has a fraction of the dragons it once had, which are not enough to protect Pern. However, Flar, a bronze dragon rider from Bendon Weir, believes that Thread will come back, and through various signs, he believes that Threadfall is imminent and that Pern is fatally unprepared. Flar wants to gain control of the last remaining Weir and rouse the dragon riders and the people living in the holds of Pern to defend themselves. At the beginning of Dragonflight, Flar is searching holds for a woman to impress or bond with the next queen dragon of Bendon. The old queen is dying and her final clutch of eggs is about to hatch. Flar discovers a young woman named Lessa, the last of a noble family, hiding at Ratha Hold, where a villainous lord holder named Fax has taken over, and together Flar and Lessa will save Pern and discover what happened to the 5 missing Dragon Weirs. Dragonquest picks up 7 years later, and at this point I'm going to put a mild spoiler warning for events in Dragonflight, because in order to explain what happens in the next 2 books, I'm going to tell you kind of what happens at the end of Dragonflight. In this book, a schism is developing between the old-timers and the modern dragon riders. The old-timers are the dragons and dragon riders that came forward in time from the previous past, because teleportation and limited time travel are something that dragons can do. It has become very apparent that there are social and cultural differences between the old-timers and the modern dragon riders because they lived 400 years apart. One of the major questions introduced in Dragonquest is how to rid Pern of the threat of Thread forever, and what that means for the future of dragon riders. In The White Dragon, Jackson and Ruth are the main characters that tie together a bunch of stories and events. He is destined to be the Lord Holder of Varatha when he is older, but he has also accidentally impressed Ruth, a very unusual white albino dragon. The White Dragon, I would say, is mostly a coming-of-age story for Jackson as he struggles with his dual role of Lord Holder and Dragon Rider, and his first forays into romantic relationships and taking on more of his adult responsibilities. And throughout the book, many of the most exciting events in Pern's history happen, major adventures and discoveries in the southern continent about the ancient people who colonized Pern, and upheavals with ambitious lord holders who want to expand their lands, and of course, more political troubles with the exiled old-timers. Basically, these first 3 books in a nutshell are about how Pern's social and political landscape are rapidly shifting under pressures of exploration, colonization, new technologies, new ways of thinking, and new ways that the castes of Pern, the Dragon Riders, holders, and craft halls are interacting with each other. There are some major flaws in these first 3 books. Even though I love this series, I'm going to spend a significant amount of time talking about what I didn't like so much. In Dragonflight, there are some disturbing and unpalatable attitudes about gender roles, the way that women are treated, and romanticized non-consensual sex. This is especially disappointing because Flar, the hero and one of the most well-known Pern characters, behaves and thinks in this way, and the way that he treats Lessa in this book is frankly appalling. I think that Dragonflight in particular shows Pernese society and attitudes at their worst and at their least developed. There are many elements in this book that do not feel at all like the Pern that I know and love from later stories. Because of these problems in the first book, I have to say that I now think that first-time readers will have a much more favorable impression of the Pern books and be able to get into this series more if they start with the Harper Hall trilogy instead. Dragonflight is very likely to disgust modern readers, especially those who read with a critical eye towards gender roles, the way that women are portrayed, and sexist attitudes. And I think that even just most readers, even who don't have those kind of priorities while reading, will probably notice it and maybe be a bit bothered by it. It's very obvious. Dragonquest and the White Dragon, I think, are mild improvements on Dragonflight, especially where the strength of the writing, characterization, and making Pern more interesting and complex are concerned. The chauvinistic and misogynistic attitudes that underpin the world building in Dragonflight are toned down or just not as front and center in these books. In Dragonquest, Fëanor and Breki do have one scene, it's short, not a lot of detail, that once again implies that non-consensual sex turns into a romantic relationship, but I just didn't see this as awful as the Flar and Lessa scenes in Dragonflight, probably because it's pretty clear that Fëanor and Breki like each other before this happens. Their romantic interest in each other, their romance overall, is much more believable than the strange reversal in Flar and Lessa's antagonistic relationship. In The White Dragon, Jackson also has some interesting scenes with women, particularly with a woman named Korana who lives in his hold. She is his social inferior, and there's some power dynamics in their relationship that can be pretty uncomfortable when you think about that. But once again, I think this is a mild improvement as the series goes on. There is actually a scene where Jackson feels badly about how he's behaved. He realizes that he's done something wrong, and his next relationship is finally one that contains consent and mutual affection from the start. You can probably tell from all of that what my major concern was while reading these books and the lens that I was looking at them through. I have an issue with the way that McCaffrey was writing what I think are old-fashioned ideas about sexual relationships, so we'll just leave that. I think that's very, very clear. There were some other problems. Particularly, I had to point out that I do not think that the writing in Dragonflight is very good. I think it is noticeably bad compared to the other books in the series. The plot and pacing in The White Dragon are kind of off. And yeah, a lot of the characters are irritating or unlikable for various reasons. Rereading this series as an adult, my first reaction is that the individual characters and their personalities are not always the best part of the series. The world building is. It's the world and the scenario that McCaffrey imagines that captivate me. I love the ideas, the struggles, and the discoveries, mainly at the political and social level rather than at the personal level. Honestly, what I love the most about Dragonflight are my very nostalgic childhood memories of loving this book and loving this series. And Lessa has a very triumphant moment at the end of the book, despite all of the misogynistic and sexist stuff in the book. The one person who does what nobody else thought was possible is a woman, and that has always been the payoff for me. However, I found Dragonquest to be much more emotionally satisfying than Dragonflight, probably because it's the middle book and my sense of anticipation was really growing. I recognized a lot of the things being introduced and how they were going to pay off and become big things in the later books. Master Harper Robinson is also a bigger character in this book. He is one of the few instantly likable, good people introduced in the first two books. He is one of my all-time favorite characters in this series and I love reading about him. No surprise, in The White Dragon, I didn't care about Jackson all that much. I have never cared about him very much. I find him to be a little bit irritating in a teenage boy way, but I was really pleasantly surprised at how much I liked his dragon Ruth. I didn't remember much about the White Dragon of the title before I reread this, and it was such a pleasant surprise to really enjoy Ruth as a character. Like all dragons, he's pretty inherently good and non-threatening, but it was really nice to see him bolstering Jackson. There's a lot of affection between them, and a lot of the major dragons in Pern achieve this legendary at a distance status where they're not really characters to me, but Ruth felt like an actual character in this book. He talks to fire lizards and other dragons. He talks to other human characters as well. And it's just something that I don't remember really any other dragons in the series doing, so I really enjoyed that. Overall, I'm also astonished at realizing how formative these books were for me. I can see now how my taste in science fiction and fantasy throughout my life has been very much shaped by reading these books as a child. In particular, the trope of the low technology society rediscovering its high-tech ancestors and the fantasy world revealed to be a science fictional one is an idea that I love and I really enjoy reading in books to this day. These are great adventure stories with a high entertainment value. They have been very influential in the SFF field and to many authors writing today, so I hope that some of you may consider picking up one of these books and giving this world a try. It's not going to be for everyone, especially if you read with a very critical eye, but I think it does have immense value in the history of science fiction and fantasy. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you have read any of the Pern books and you want to discuss them, please comment down below. I would love to know what you liked or disliked about this series and at what age you read these books for the first time. Did you read them when you were a kid or discover them as an adult? And do you think that the age at which you read them shaped how you feel about them, how much you enjoy them? Let's discuss this because I'm really interested in it, having read these books now as a child, as an adult. Very different reactions. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back to talk to you again in my next video. And until then, bye.